Hi everyone, and welcome to the first installment of I Nominate You to Perform. The idea behind this project is that members of Friction nominate each other to play solo pieces that are important to them. And I think this project is really cool because one of the best things about being in a string quartet is you get to learn about lots of types of pieces and composers that you never would have come across had it not been for your colleagues and all the great investigating they do in researching repertoire. So during the COVID pandemic, I've really missed that element of being in a string quartet, of learning about the music that's important to my colleagues. The first installment is going to be a piece that Kevin has nominated me to perform, and I'm really excited about this nomination, so I'm going to pass it off to Kevin to tell you about it.
Yeah, I think Doug had a great idea, and I also miss everything that Doug talked about, learning about new pieces by composers I'd never heard of, and the piece I nominated Doug to play is by one of those composers I had never heard of, and this is a composer that Doug introduced me to. This is a work by Andrew Norman. It's a work called For Ashley, written for Ashley Bathgate, who is an amazing cellist. This work is inspired by Bach, so it has some references to the patterns, arpeggios, and things that you'll hear in the Bach Fourth Cello Suite. And one thing I was thinking about when thinking of a piece for Doug for this nomination, I thought about composers I have a strong association with. Doug and Andrew Norman is one of those composers. I remember we were driving to the St. Louis String Quartet Seminar, and Doug put on Spotify the piece Play by Andrew Norman, and I was blown away by the textures and colors, and I'd never heard music like that. It was a similar experience I had to listening to the 300 for the Victims of Hiroshima by Penderecki. It was so altering to the way I hear things, and it's one of those pieces that's really powerful for me, and that moment is strongly linked to hanging out with Doug. So immediately when talking about a nomination, I thought, okay, I'm going to search Andrew Norman, solo cello piece, and found this online. It was the first piece that popped up, and I listened to it, and I was like, this is it. This is what I want Doug to play, because of this Andrew Norman connection, but also because it references these Bach cello pieces. And when Doug and I first started making music together, Doug was practicing a Bach cello suite he was performing, and I felt like this kind of piece that's inspired by Bach, that's connected to this composer I have strong associations with, Doug, was a great piece for a nomination.
I really have loved working on For Ashley by Andrew Norman. It's honestly been the most satisfying experience I've had working on a solo cello piece. And as Kevin said, we both really loved the work Play, which is for full symphony orchestra. And so it's fascinating to see how a composer's voice changes when you go from having the biggest canvas and the largest number of colors all the way down to just one instrument. And the way that Andrew Norman handles this challenge is that he actually adds more notes than you're used to hearing in classical music. He uses what are called quarter tones. And so these are kind of the notes between the notes. If you think of a piano keyboard, you have 12 notes, 12 half steps in an octave, but now there's twice as many of those of those steps, and now they're quarter steps. So when you hear the performance, it probably will sound out of tune to you, and maybe it is out of tune a little bit at times, but also a lot of the times it's really just those notes between the notes that we're not used to hearing. And I also really love the way that he uses rhythmic groupings to really keep the listener guessing. He sets up this really groovy start. that's quite predictable, but then there's these little changes where a certain part of the arpeggio will add a 16th and then it'll add another 16th, and then maybe another part of the arpeggio will change slightly. But it's always this process that's completely coherent upon further listen. You can really track what's happening, and you can really track how the bass line is moving up or down in the same way that when you listen to Bach suites, you can really track the bass line.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if you like music that's groovy, if you like music by Bach, and if you like having your ear challenged in a good way and a pleasant way, then I think you'll love this piece.